Undercover owner saw, waitress with a broken hand in his diner. What he discovered left him stunned. In the heart of a bustling city, inside a modern diner with stainless steel counters and the smell of fresh coffee in the air, a young black waiter struggled to balance a tray with one arm in a cast. Customers whispered, staring at his sling, while a sharp-dressed businesswoman stood nearby, arms crossed, eyes filled with judgment. To most, he looked like just another employee struggling to keep up. But what no one knew was that one of the quiet diners, sitting in the corner, wasn't an ordinary customer. He was the undercover owner, and what he was about to witness would change everything. The diner was a 2025 reimagining of the classic American eatery, sleek tiles, polished chrome, and neon signs glowing outside. It was supposed to be a place of warmth, comfort, and community. But on that morning, it was filled with an unsettling tension. Michael, the black waiter with the broken arm, had been working at the diner for months. His story was known only in fragments. Rumors that he'd been in an accident. Whispers about how he managed to work despite his injury. Every day, he put on his uniform, tied his apron carefully with his good hand, and carried trays for strangers who barely looked at him. Some customers respected his determination, but others were less kind. Many saw only his brokenness, not his resilience. Among them was a manager, a middle-aged woman in a sleek business suit who seemed to find fault in his every move. The slightest spill, the smallest delay, even the tremor in his hands brought her icy stares and biting reprimands. That morning, she stood near the counter, arms crossed, glaring at Michael as he served coffee with careful balance. Around them, several men and women in booths ate their meals, some curious, others indifferent. The air felt heavy, as if everyone was waiting for something to break. In the corner, quietly sipping his coffee, sat a man with gray hair and a simple jacket. To anyone else, he looked like just another customer. But he wasn't. He was Daniel Harper, the true owner of the diner. He had decided to visit Undercover. Tired of hearing glowing reports from his management team, he wanted to see for himself how his staff and customers were treated. What he discovered that day would leave him stunned. Daniel had owned the diner chain for over 2 decades. To the public, he was a wealthy entrepreneur. But in his heart, he still remembered starting as a dishwasher in a small-town diner, saving every penny to build his dream. That's why he believed in respect, dignity, and second chances for every worker. Yet as he sat watching Michael, something didn't sit right. Michael moved with deliberate care, his casted arm held close to his chest while balancing a tray with the other. Every step looked painful, but his face carried quiet determination. He stopped at a booth where an older woman in a denim jacket sat. She looked at him with compassion, offering a gentle smile. But Daniel noticed how Michael glanced nervously toward the manager before even speaking. The manager's presence was suffocating. She followed Michael with her eyes like a hawk, her posture rigid, her expression sharp. Whenever he faltered, spilling a few drops of coffee, or taking too long to collect plates, her arms tightened across her chest. Then Daniel overheard something that made his stomach tighten. At a booth behind him, 2 customers whispered. "Why do they even let him work like that?" One muttered. "Probably desperate," the other replied. "But if he messes up my order, I'll complain." Daniel's jaw clenched. He remembered being that young man, working with injuries, hiding his struggles because no one cared. The difference was, back then, he had a boss who gave him grace. But as the minutes ticked by, the manager's behavior worsened. When Michael accidentally set a cup slightly off-center, she leaned in and muttered something that made his shoulders slump. The surrounding diners exchanged awkward glances, sensing the cruelty disguised as authority. Daniel watched closely. Michael wasn't just doing his job, he was fighting through pain to keep it. Every time the tray wobbled, his good hand gripped tighter, his eyes focused harder. And still, he carried on. The tension escalated when a group of customers waved for service. Michael hurried over, but as he shifted the tray, a cup tipped slightly, spilling a splash of coffee onto the table. Gasps echoed across the diner. The manager stormed forward, her face flushed with anger. "Unacceptable!" she snapped, loud enough for half the diner to hear. Her words struck like daggers, and Michael froze, his eyes dropping to the floor. The booths fell silent. Even those who had been indifferent now stared, some in discomfort, others in judgment. Daniel's heart pounded. He had seen enough. But before he acted, he wanted to see how far this would go. He leaned back, watching the story unfold before stepping in as more than just a customer. The diner felt like a stage, and Michael stood at its center, trembling under the weight of humiliation. The manager's voice rose as she scolded him publicly, pointing at the spilled coffee like it was a crime. "Look at this mess," she said sharply. "You can't even carry a tray with one good arm? You're a liability to this diner." The words stung. Customers shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke. Michael swallowed hard, his face burning with shame. He bent down, trying to wipe the table with his one free hand, his cast bumping awkwardly against the booth. Daniel's chest tightened. He had always believed that dignity mattered more than profit. But here he was, watching one of his employees torn apart for something beyond his control. His grip on his coffee cup tightened until his knuckles whitened. The breaking point came when the manager leaned in closer and hissed, "If you can't even serve properly, maybe you don't belong here." The silence that followed was deafening. Every pair of eyes in the diner fixed on Michael, waiting for his response. But before he could speak, Daniel rose from his booth. The scrape of his chair echoed louder than the manager's words. He walked forward, slow but deliberate, his gaze steady. The manager turned, startled by the sudden interruption. "Who are you?" she asked sharply. Daniel's voice was calm, but carried an authority that silenced the room. "I'm the one who built this diner, the one who signs the paychecks, and the one who just watched you humiliate a man who is working harder with one arm than most people do with two." Gasps rippled across the diner. The manager's face drained of color. Michael froze, his eyes wide with disbelief. Daniel's words cut through the silence like thunder. "You think strength is measured by perfection? No, it's measured by resilience. And right now, this young man is the strongest person in this room." The diner erupted in murmurs as Daniel's identity sank in. The once intimidating manager now looked small, her arrogance crumbling. Customers exchanged looks, some ashamed for staying silent, others relieved someone finally spoke up. Michael stood frozen, tray still in hand, unable to process what had just happened. For months he had endured humiliation, hiding his pain to keep a job he desperately needed. Now, the very owner of the diner had defended him in front of everyone. Daniel turned to Michael and spoke with warmth. "You remind me of myself. Years ago, I worked with injuries no one cared about, but I fought through, not because I had to prove myself, but because I refused to give up. And seeing you, I know this diner still has the heart I built it with." Then Daniel faced the room, his voice firm. "This diner was meant to be a place of respect, for customers and workers alike. If you can't uphold that, you don't belong here."